This evening we are coming together to talk about transportation. This is one of the critical issues in our life today. One of the ways in which my organization, We Act for Environmental Justice, focuses on this issue is through our campaign to achieve transportation equity. And some people say, well, what is transportation equity? For us, transportation equity is really about making sure that in neighborhoods like Washington Heights, in neighborhoods like Inwood, in neighborhoods like Harlem, whether it's Central Harlem or West Harlem or East Harlem or Barrio, that the transportation services that we receive are comparable to the best in the world, and that we are second class to no one. Unfortunately, far too often, it is not so. When you look at subway stations that collapse, like has happened here at 181st Street, when you look at the fact that people have to wait far too long for the M5 bus, or for the 101 or the 100 bus, when you look at these things and recognize that service and conditions in our transportation infrastructure across the city are much better in wealthier neighborhoods, more affluent neighborhoods than ours, that spells a very serious problem. And for us, transportation equity is about making those wrongs very right. We are leading a campaign that we call NICE-T, the New York State Transportation Equity Alliance. And for most of its young life, that campaign has been focused on the federal transportation reauthorization bill. It's the bill that provides a lot of the money for transportation infrastructure across this country. And very shortly, we're going to be working on developing our state agenda, why it's important for all of these candidates here this evening, because we're going to be focusing on the state agenda. And for those of you who are lucky enough and fortunate enough to have received the vote from those in the 31st Senatorial District to serve as their state senator, be forewarned that we will be coming to you with an agenda for transportation equity. In the past, We Act has worked on making sure that bus depots in our neighborhoods, whether it's Harlem or Washington Heights, are clean and green. We've also worked on making sure that when two fare zones existed in the city, that they were eliminated, so that we could get a system that allowed people to access the places that they need to for work, for school, for play, for praying, etc. I am really, really pleased that we're having this debate today, and I am going to invite Paul Steely-White in 1 second to come up and introduce both our moderators and our candidates. But before I go, I wanted to once again acknowledge all of you for being here this evening. It's important that you come out. It's important that you go out and vote. Election day, as I'm sure these candidates will remind you, for the primaries is on September 14th. It's important that you participate in the civic life of our city and our communities. To that end, we're going to encourage people, if you have questions, we'll be passing out index cards, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as we can within the allotted time. I wanted to make sure that we all, both TA and We Act, wanted to make sure that that people were comfortable, so we gave you wonderful food from El Malecon. We also wanted to make sure that everybody can participate in this equally and accessibly. And so we found a place that allowed us to make sure that those who are differently abled could enter. And we also made sure that there were translators available so that we could indeed make sure that we had full participation by others without any language barriers. I want to acknowledge dynamic multilingual translations, and the two gentlemen in the back could raise their hands. I'm going to admonish the candidates, I'm going to admonish Paul, and I'm going to admonish the moderators and you in the audience that translators do an amazing job, but they can't do it at lightning speed. So that if you speak very fast, you need to slow down and allow the translators an opportunity to translate what you have said. With that, I want to close, and I want to bring Paul Steely-White to the stage. Paul Steely-White is the Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives. a very dynamic group that has fought for the rights of cyclists and others to improve our transportation system. And again, I'm really proud to be working with Paul on this particular issue. So Paul, who is ready to come to the stage? Paul is ready to come to the stage. Can you welcome Paul Silly-White?
Thank you, Cecil. Terrific introduction. I'll be very brief. We want to hear from our candidates, of course. This is the third such debate that we have co-hosted with a local partner. We did Senate District 10 out in Richmond Hill, Queens last week, and then the 33rd in Fordham. And you know, the wonderful thing, one of the wonderful things about these forums is, of course, getting our candidates on the record. Which is all important. If it's not written down or recorded, it sometimes doesn't matter in the world of politics. And then, of course, you, the voter, and you, the Fourth Estate, the press, getting to know where they stand on critical issues, such as transit. And make no mistake, transit is critical to the 31st Senate District. In this district, over 75% of commuters are traveling to work by bus, by subway, increasingly by walking and cycling. That's one of the highest in the city. In terms of trips to the Manhattan CBD south of 60th Street, it's even higher. It's over 90%. As Cecil pointed out, we have decrepit subway stations. We have bus cuts. The M18 doesn't even exist anymore. Other bus routes have been cut drastically. I think we can only expect more cuts, more fare hikes, unless we get some serious leadership in Albany, who truly represents the majority of us who are traveling by mass transit. Pedestrian safety is also very important to this district. On average, we have about 580 pedestrians being struck at intersections in the district here. That's 580 people per year struck by motor vehicles, some killed. As the city's report pointed out a few weeks ago, most of these tragedies are preventable. Most are not the fault of the pedestrian, but reckless drivers not yielding to pedestrians in the crosswalk, disobeying traffic laws. So we also want to know, what are you going to do to curb reckless driving in New York, particularly in this district? Dyckman Street is a horror show. One of the many streets that desperately need better enforcement and traffic calming. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce the professionals who will be putting our candidates to the test tonight. We have David King, who's a professor of urban planning at Columbia University.
All right.
Wonderful guy, David King. And we also have Dan Rivoli from the West Side Spirit. And